love that. I am very excited for our next session with our star guest this afternoon, someone who I don't think needs an introduction, but I am very excited to introduce an icon of British radio and television, someone who has made their mark with a legendary show on BBC Radio 1 Breakfast, revolutionised the airwaves in the 1980s, and become a household name on British television with the likes of Top of the Pops. Woohoo! Yeah! Personal fan over here. Mike Reid has been a key figure in shaping British music and broadcasting, becoming one of the country's most recognisable voices. Not only has he made his mark on mainstream media, but his passion for local and community radio continues to inspire a newer generation of broadcasters as well. Plus, there's more. Beyond the microphone, Mike is a writer, playwright, songwriter, and an advocate for preserving cultural heritage. Please join me in welcoming Mike Reid to the show.
Hello. Oh, yeah, it works. Marvellous. Marvellous.
It's always a good start.
Oh, and water as well. Brilliant.
Now, I'm just going to launch straight into it.
Launch straight in,
I know
that's
that
fine.
we've got a
Yeah.
room full of people who would love to know the full spectrum of your career history. And also we've got a fair few station managers in the room who I would like to provide some valuable and tangible advice to. But we'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
Now, there are some fantastic stories online of your early days in radio, from I think auditioning for Radio Luxembourg and Pop Quiz, which became Pop Quiz on the same day, driving overnight to Birmingham for the first BBC Radio 1 breakfast show, and all sorts. So, what drew you into the world of broadcasting in the first place?
Well, it was a guy called Neil French Blake. Neil was he was a very typical old Etonian Neil. He was something, he don't talk like that most of the time. He was a lovely bloke, smashing guy. I spoke at his funeral and I said to his wife, he was married to the daughter of the Duke of St Albans, and I said, I'm not going to say anything serious because I can't. But he was great. He oiked me in, and I'd never done any radio, and he said, I want you on my station for 3 reasons. And I said, right. I thought he wanted me to sing and play the guitar. Sadly, he didn't. Wise man. But he said, I want you on my station because he said, you're very English. You're mildly eccentric. And I thought, that's fine coming from you, mate. And you're a bloody good opening bowler. And I said, what's that got to do with it? He said, I'm starting a cricket team and you're opening the bowling. And I said, well, I already play for a team. I play for Tim Rice's team. He said, you also play for me now. I said, oh, okay, fine. I said, do you want to hear me on air? He said, no, you'll be fine. And that was it. I've never been on air. Steve Wright and myself were thrown together because my name's Reid and Wright. He thought it was a clever idea, and he was right. And we had a practice one morning. I picked Steve up, we went to the practice, we didn't know we were live on air. And we cancelled all the trains, we cancelled the buses, we were really misbehaving. And he stormed in and he said, do you boys realise you've been live for the last hour? This is before we actually went on air, before the station went on air. And we said, oh no, we thought, oh, we're fired. Before we started, we're fired. He said, I'm very proud of you. Really? I said, you didn't swear once. And neither of us swore much anyway, so it wasn't a great thing. But no, that's how we started, Steve and myself. Just were bunged on. He didn't hear us, he didn't audition us. We were just chucked on the radio.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
What a start.
Yeah.
Chucked you on. I did read something that in your early days of radio, you did like to push the boundaries a bit, do something a bit different out of the box, including playing songs that were considered evening songs or non-daytime songs on your breakfast show. What was your favourite track to introduce in that transition period of bringing?
But that sort of jumped forward a bit to Radio 1. I mean, we broke the boundaries at Radio 210 where we started a lot, because Neil would come in and he'd say, why don't you boys listen to the professionals and follow them? And we said, well, they're actually a bit boring, Neil, really. And we did our own thing. and he fired us probably on a weekly basis. And we were very grateful. You know, Steve and myself would look at each other and say, "Oh, we lasted a month. That's more than we thought." And they said, 2 months. We've done 2 months now. So we gradually realised that he kind of liked us, although we were quirky. He'd come in. He'd find us sitting out on the road. He said, "What the hell are you doing?" We said, "Well, we suddenly realised people are listening to us." He said, "If you're in the Green Mini, who do you?" Hey, they're listening to us. Yes, we were terribly excited that people were actually listening to us. So we sat out in the street asking cars to hoot if they were listening. I mean, and we'd go outside the studio. We'd have a transistor radio, and Steve would say, "Yeah, we're definitely on. It's definitely us." And he'd go out and listen to our own program to make sure we were really on, because we couldn't quite believe it.
Fantastic. Do you think what fueled that spirit in radio, or do you think it was centralised to what you were doing at the station? What fueled that growth of radio in the early days, in the late 70s?
Well, there were only a few stations. I think we were the 19th station, and I think the IBA said we're going to have a limit of 30 stations. Right. I mean, now they've got about 600, I think, but there was going to be a limit. So, of course, all the big names wanted to be on some of those local stations, and those that were close to London were much easier to access. So, I remember on the first day, nobody wanted to go out into the town because there were thousands of people there. David Cassidy flew in, Mark Bolan came in, and all the senior broadcasters said, "Oh, I don't want to do that." So he chucked me down there, which was wonderful. So, you know, there I am interviewing my first day in radio. David Cassidy, Mark Bolan, like it just happens every day, you know. Thousands of people there, tearing at you and screaming at you because you had free t-shirts and stickers. Obviously that was the real reason. And I was rescued and driven back by the police, and I thought, this is radio, this is what happens every day, because it doesn't. But we had the early spirit of radio. It was very much, it was a community thing, because we were planning on having a swimming pool. Paul Hollingdale would come in, venerable broadcaster, and polish the studio while we were on there. We said, "Paul, we're on there, we're doing a program." He said, "I know, it has to be polished to a higher gleam, we have to keep the standards up." And Vera, the cleaning lady, would come in with a hoover. We go, "Vera, we're doing a program." And she said, "I don't care about that, I'm going to get Ron's lunch, I'm going to get on there, lift your feet up. Oh, okay. So it was an interesting one. I remember Demis Roussos turned up to be interviewed by us, and he said, I won't be interviewed until I have cake. So he brought him a slice of cake, which he just dismissed. He said, "I want a whole cake." So we had to go on air and say, "Has anybody got a whole cake?" And 2 listeners came around with cakes, which he demolished, belched loudly, and said, "No, I am ready." So we were sort of making it up as we went along. I remember the Flying Burrito Brothers turned up one day in a tour bus, and there was only me there. And I was just knocking on the window, and I looked out, there's a tour bus, the Flying Burrito Brothers. Blimey. You know, so I let them in. I set up microphones, I recorded them singing and playing. I did an interview with them, and they went. And the following day, Neil French Blake, he said, "I'm so proud of the way we've taught you." Which is what he said, "This band turned up from America, you know all about them, you know how to set it up, record them, you know, take the recordings, do an interview with them." He said, "That's what radio's all about." So he was great. It was great to have people like that behind you to teach you. I mean, it's like at Radio 1, I thought that I was just having a lot of fun. And it turns out I learned stuff, you know, because we had producers. And even now, if I'm wittering on the radio, I can hear a radio producer saying, "Shut up and play a record." "Oh, yeah, okay, right. So we did learn a lot. You did learn from those older broadcasters, from the Alan Freemans and people like that, and the producers you had. So you thought you were just having a laugh, but you were learning stuff.
Stood you in good stead for the next few years, I take it.
Yeah.
Can you take us through that transition to Luxembourg and then on to BBC Radio and Breakfast through to the early 80s, mid-80s?
Yes. Well, I was on 210 at Reading, and then I got a call from Radio Luxembourg. The HQ, of course, was in Harper Street in London, and they said, "Peter Powell is moving to Radio 1. Would you send in an audition tape?" And I was really busy at the time. I was doing a quiz, so I was organising that. I was doing about 8 programs a week, and I just didn't have time to do it. It wasn't being blasé, I just physically didn't have time to record a tape. I thought, what do they want? And they pushed me, and I said, I'm sorry, I haven't had time. They said, well, we've got about 2,000 tapes in, and I thought, well, what chance have I got? And they said, well, why don't you come up to Harper Street and do a live audition? So I went up there and sat there in front of people like Ken Evans and Alan Keane, the bosses of Luxembourg, and I did a live audition. And Alan Keane said, well, Mike, he said, very good. He said, but we do have 2,000 tapes, so we'll let you know as soon as possible. And I thought, well, that's that. And the following day, I got the gig. They phoned me up and I got it. And I think it's not because I was probably any better than any of the 2,000 tapes, it's just they couldn't be bothered to listen to 2,000 tapes. Really, they thought, and if you fitted in, I think it's the same with any part of our business, if you fit in as part of the team, and you're not going to be awkward, you're not going to be difficult, you're not going to be a trial, you're not going to be egotistical, you're going to fit in as part of the gang and enjoy it, and know your subject, know your music, then it's easier for them. It was easier for them to say, yeah, the guy who was in yesterday, put those 2,000 boxes away.
Right, fantastic. So how do you get your foot through the door first? How do you make sure you're in there above all these 2,000 other people?
How did I make sure?
You're in there first.
Well, only because I did it live, and that was how I got it. And I was at Luxembourg for 10 months, I think, and then Radio 1 had heard a 7-Up program I'd done. They waked me over, and I thought, ooh. Actually, before that, I came over for the opening of Evita, because I'd written a lot of the Guinness books with Tim Rice or what have you, and Paul Gambaccini. So I came over for the opening of Evita, and there was a dinner afterwards, and Derek Chinnery, who was the head of Radio 1 then, who was a real, senior character, if you got it with Derek, wow. And we were having dinner, and I thought, I resisted the temptation to talk across the table to him and sort of throw my dice on the table for Radio 1. I thought it was a bit too obvious. I'll be a bit cooler than that. Not too cool. And afterwards we were going, and I said, very nice to meet you, Mr. Chinnery. He said, and you always hummed, Derek, and you could never tell. He's a great poker player, probably. He said, no doubt we'll talk again soon. I thought, what? No doubt we'll talk again soon. Did he mean anything by that? Within a couple of weeks, I was over there, and with Dorian Davis, the lovely Dorian Davis, who was our head of music, and then in with Derek, and he said, you've got 6 programs a week at Luxembourg, we can only offer you 1 a week. And I thought, I'll take it. As you do. It's like saying, I play for Halifax Town, I'm in the first team every week, and Manchester United say, well, we'll take you on, but you'll probably be on the bench. If you believe in yourself, you go for it, you sit on the bench because you believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, you stick with Halifax Town. So he said, well, we can only offer you 1 program a week. And I said, yeah, okay. And he phoned my agent, and he said, Mike has a kind of dilettante approach. He said, is he independently wealthy? And my agent said, no, I don't think he is. He said, he gives that impression. He said, does he want the job? Yes, he said, I think he does. He said, oh, okay. He said, because we like him. He just gave the impression that he wasn't too bothered. He said, no, that's kind of his way. And that was the same when I did Saturday Superstore on Saturday mornings as well, that Chris Bellinger, our editor, who I'm still friends with, came running across the car park. He said, if we were to offer you this job, would you take it? And I said, yeah. He said, we weren't sure. He said, you sounded like you weren't too bothered. I said, no, I am, that's just me. So anyway, yes, so it's, sometimes you've got to, impress the examiner by looking in the driving mirror, which I often forget to do.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that one. Now, obviously media is a fast and ever-changing industry. What do you think is key for us to adapt and pivot as and when needed?
It's very difficult because there are so many stations now.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a USP because if you don't, why would people listen to me in the morning as opposed to someone else? They've got so many choices, 600 stations here and stations worldwide you can listen to, or TV. I mean, what is going to make them listen to me or to our station? So I think you've got to have a unique selling point. So many stations sound the same, and more people are doing radio who are unpaid, who just want to do radio. But back in the day, that wasn't the case. There weren't unpaid people on the radio. You were on and you got paid. Now that the vast chasm between Radio 2 payment and community radio payment. Well, I mean, for goodness sake, there's no in between. There's a few stations that pay. That have said to me, "Oh, would you come on?" And I thought, no, because I'd be bored. I could take the money, but I'd be bored because I'd be reading what you told me to read. I'd be playing what you told me to play, and I don't want to do that. Really, and not being perverse, not being awkward, not being egotistical, not being difficult. I don't want to do that. It wouldn't appeal to me. I want to get up in the morning and I'm really looking forward to the program, not, oh God, here we go again. I wouldn't want to do that.
What is that fire in your belly that keeps you going?
It's like anything. It's like I still love writing songs, musicals, books. Just had my 41st book out. I think it's enthusiasm for what you do and love for what you do, really. I mean, I love doing the radio. It's great. I mean, it's different to TV. When you're doing like Saturday morning TV or something, you get all the accolades, but really it's a team. You're just the tip of the iceberg. Everybody else is there, the floor managers, the directors, the producers, the telephone people. You're part of a team. But in radio, radio, nobody really has producers anymore. We always used to. Radio 1 and then at Capital, every program had a producer. They kind of dispense with that now. So radio is just you, really, and what you do. And I try and make it great. I try and make it interesting. I try and make it fun. It's a bit like, putting radio up on social media. So social media is a bit like being on stage. Okay. And when the curtains open, you go on stage, the audience is saying, go on then, entertain me. Make me laugh, make me cry, amuse me, tell me stuff I didn't know, inform me. But I've got to say, don't bore me because I'm going to walk out. And it's the same with radio. If you do that, they can switch off. You've got to entertain, you've got to keep them there. You've got to have people say, somebody said to me the other morning, they said, I've tried to get to work, but you keep playing great songs. That's the key. That's the key. So yeah, it's keeping people there. It's having USP and making them want to listen to you because they have so many choices. They have so many choices. And a lot of stations, and probably not being disparaging, but really quite a few people here do it. And I hear people doing it all the time and have done for years. It's the birthdays and on this day, which is, I always think, apologies if you do it, and I know you do, but it is, for my money, not a cop-out, but it's an easy hour. You can pick up a book on this day, you can pick up a book on birthdays, read them out, and do the songs, and you don't have to think about that hour, you don't have to be creative. The only problem is fine, but the only problem is there are probably 300 other stations doing exactly the same thing. So that doesn't give you a USP. There are other people doing that on this day. It's the birthday, it's the day. I hear it all the time. And you think, yeah, okay, well, it's kind of your birthday every day, so just play the great songs, really.
Exactly. That is the magic of radio for me. When you finish your drive, you're sat in the driveway, but you don't want to turn your car off because you're like, oh, just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more.
Yeah, it was one of the Radio 1 presenters did that to me once. I was doing an evening show, and he phoned me up and he said, "You bastard." I said, what have I done? What have I done? I thought I'd done something really bad. And he said, "I bought a takeaway an hour ago. I've eaten it in the car smells horrible, it smells of old takeaway, and I'm still in the car."
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
All right, now I think what we'll do for the last few minutes is turn to the audience. I'm sure there's some burning questions that we've got
heaven help us.
answered. Anyone want to
It's a lie, it's a lie, I was never there. Nor were the nuns, they weren't anywhere near at the time.
The lawyers involved. Only joking. Mike, I just wanted to ask you about, because I know you've done Classic FM in the past and also Jazz FM as well, so,
yeah.
And obviously that's different to Radio 1 as a music genre as well. So how did you feel moving through all those genres as well? Presumably you have a wide music collection at home as well with that.
Yes, Jazz FM was tricky because I didn't know very much about people like Wynton Marsalis and things like that, so it was an element of bluff. Here's the great Wynton Marsalis. Who is he? Jazz FM a bit strange. I remember they rebranded as JFM at one point. And on the side of the bus is saying, hey, Jazz isn't just so-and-so, it's also Aretha Franklin, Eric Clapton. I thought, no, it isn't. It isn't. You know, they're just trying to get a broader sweep there. But I remember one time I wanted to play Dave Brubeck, Take 5, and they said, oh, we don't have that in the library. I said, right, you're a jazz station, but you don't have Take 5? So that was a bit of a strange one. Classic FM I like more because I knew more about the, the stuff, and occasionally when you had a laugh and said Gilbert O'Sullivan rather than Gilbert and Sullivan, people thought you were being serious. But I enjoyed that enormously because Michael Buck, who was the head of Classic FM at the time, wanted to bring something different to it. He wanted to bring an edge into it, and they did test people. I think the two people that came out highest, he said to me once in the testing, were myself and Richard Baker, with the lovely Richard Baker. So I enjoyed that enormously. Michael Buck also was part of the Capital setup, and they had a radio station in Africa, I think in East Africa somewhere. And he was down there, and this is actually a true story, that he went to see one of the presenters who was having some building work done. And he said, just be careful in the dark because I'm having loads of building work done. And Michael fell down this great hole as he's shouting. The presenter went out and had the great presence of mind to look down and go, my hole's got a bucket in it. Great line, great line. But no, I enjoy Classic FM enormously. We went on the road with the late great Phil Swerve producing, Tony Slattery, Barry, what was his name? The great writer. I wrote a lot with him. Yeah. And we wrote the three fivers together, a series. But the three of us went on the road with Classic FM quiz. And it was great. It was terrific fun. Really, really good fun. And then GWR took over and kind of stopped the fun. So, but up until that point, we were having a great time and it was doing well. But they then put the quiz, the last quiz we did, the last series, they ran it, I think, 10 times. And I said, I'm sure everyone knows the answers by now. You've been running it for a year. You know, go on.
Another couple of questions.
Right, just a quick question. Out of all the gigs that you've had over the years, what's your favourite?
My favourite what? My favourite?
Gig on the radio, yeah.
Oh, favourite gig. Oh gosh, it's difficult because I've enjoyed them all really. I mean, Radio 1 was terrific fun, of course. Yeah, I mean, Radio 210 was fun because we were just beginning, we were starting.
I thought you were going to say that because you were free then, you could do what you want. You were shaping radio, weren't you?
We were. Steve and myself kind of did that. We came up with lots of characters that then Steve carried on doing his characters, but we came up with things like Greenfinger's Hothouse, you know, putting dung on his flowers. The days when it was difficult to say dung on the radio, and various characters we came up with. We came up with a singer who couldn't sing, who just mimed in the studio. And you know, people would turn up to get their autographs because they thought we'd got a guest in the studio. We said, no, we're just making them up. Which was interesting. Oh, it's Mickey Stryker, that's it. He was a footballer, Mickey Stryker. And Mickey, he said, so Steve would say, so Mickey, you know, how was the match? He said, scored 3 times. Scored 3 times. He said, so you won. Oh no, we lost the match. He said, I scored 3 times after the match. You know? And there were no scripts. We were just making it up as we went along. And as I said, Neil fired us every couple of weeks. And we lived through, but we changed how radio was, I think, at the time. Without realising it, we were just being us, and we were a bit devil may care and a bit, you know, well, if it all ends tomorrow, it ends tomorrow. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of people came down. I remember Simon D was slated to come, and he turned up, and Neil was going to bring him back. Simon D, the great Simon D. And Steve and myself got on so well with him, and he said, I like you boys, I like you boys. And I took him to the station on the Friday night in my old Mini, and we sat there having a chat for half an hour. He said, I'm really looking forward to Monday, looking forward to working with you and Steve, really looking forward to it. He came in on the Monday, Neil said, oh, by the way, your guest this morning is Alvin Stardust. None lovelier. Alvin, the easiest guest and a lovely man. Oh no, said Simon, I picked my own guest. Well, no, but he's already coming in. Oh, no, I picked my own guest. Then ensued an argument that escalated with Simon D storming out across the pub, across the road, and Neil going after him, trying to calm him down and placate him, which didn't work. So he never got on air. Whether his insecurity was looking for a way out, whether Alvin Stardust, that's what I felt, that Alvin Stardust, the loveliest man, was an excuse. I just felt it was an excuse, that he was nervous about getting back on air. That's what I felt, unfortunately, because he was a lovely bloke. Yes.
One more question, I think.
Two more questions then. Yeah.
Mike, thanks for coming along. Radio 1 Roadshow, were they as fun behind the scenes as we thought, and what was the best Miley gag that he got you on?
Oh, so many smiles to myself. Speak a couple of times a week. We did a roadshow with the station I'm on at the moment on Brighton Pier a couple of weeks ago, and I even got him then. We're talking about, Brighton are big on pride and what have you, and I said in August, Bank Holiday Week, they have a Prince of Pride, somebody that they all look up to, somebody that's respected, that's done a lot for seaside towns, and Smile is waiting for the person to come on. Of course, it's him. And then the policeman that handcuffed him said it's tradition that whoever is the Prince of Pride has to walk around with their Pride t-shirt around the pier handcuffed. And then we had the jive aces on. And I said, well, we've got a key to the handcuffs. And they said, throw it in the sea, which they did, but we had a spare. He didn't know that. Oh no, we had some great ones over the years. We did the Foundation Cup, and the Princess of Wales was there, and she said, what have they done to your car? I said, I know, it's 400 feet up in the air. I think Smiley put it there, but at least I won't get a ticket. We did so many crazy. I enlisted into the army for a week, which was great fun. So he said, well, don't think I'm going along with that. And I said, well, all your clothes have been removed from the hotel, and I have a sergeant major here that says you are going along with it. And this granite-faced guy came on here, oh my God, and 2 squaddies. So they manhandled him through the week. And we allowed him, because he'd been so good, a tattoo on the final day, so they tattooed his bottom. And then we let him hold the mascot, the mascot of that particular corps, and it was a little pig. And then we all left. And he said, here, wait a minute, what do I do with it? Well, it's up to you, mate. So he had to put the pig in his Land Rover and drive down to Eastbourne from Margate with the pig. And I always say that they got to the hotel and the manager said, you can't bring that in here. The pig said, why not? That's slightly made up, but yeah, I think he disposed of it on the way. Yeah, they were great fun. But you did have to think about it a lot. I mean, we were in Porthcawl, and I thought, I don't have anything for tomorrow. And I used to wear producers out. They go, oh no, what are you doing now? So I phoned up the Harley Davidson people, because we had David Essex on. I knew he liked bikes. And they said, yeah, we'll get you a Harley down there in the morning. Okay, great. Phoned up the Coast Guard. I said, could I borrow 6 flares? He said, yeah. He said, we don't want them back, don't worry. So I had 6 flares on the Harley. David was driving it. I was on the pillion. And we drove through 25,000 people, no security, no barriers, up 2 planks and onto the stage. No insurance, no crash helmets, no security, letting flares off. I mean, absolutely wouldn't be allowed today. You couldn't get away with that. But the audience loved it, so did we.
Afternoon, Mike. We've never met, but you have a very special place in my little world.
In your heart.
In my heart. Any DJ in 1988.
Let's go to the cinema later.
The evening has endless possibilities. In 1988, I remember you starting a Radio 1 show. I think you were on in the evening at one point, and you started a Radio 1 show with 3 Jimi Hendrix tracks. And I went, yeah, I'm feeling very much in my spiritual home. But at that point, I had a rather wealthy friend who nicked his father's car, and we were speeding up the M1 listening to you, and then I picked up this thing that was the size of a breeze block and sort of put my ear to it. It turned out this was a mobile phone. that you are the very first person I ever spoke to on the mobile phone, because we're listening to your show and said, let's give him a call. Now, we assumed that the revered Radio 1 DJ would have a sort of army of phone ops and funkies and stuff to protect you from the likes of us speeding up the M1 in a slick Mercedes. And you answered the phone, and it was a tremendous example, I think, of being connected to the audience. None of which has anything to do with the question I had for you.
Before you answer the question, let me say, but there was just us in the evenings. There was myself and John Peel. There was nobody else around. The producers didn't want to come. They wanted to be at home eating their cauliflower cheese and having a bottle of claret in the evening. They didn't want to be in there, so it was just Peely and myself. So we did. Now, I mean, Radio 2 probably got 30 people dealing with programs, top of the pop. So it was just us. In fact, when I had to go up and do a breakfast show and DLT was ill, I said to John, they want me to go up to Birmingham. He said, oh, okay. So I drove into an unlit hole in St John's Wood. And I found a telephone box and I phoned him and I said, John, I just wrecked the car, I'm just doing a dial. He said, come back here. He said, I'll drive you up there. So I went back there, and at midnight, Peely drove me up to Birmingham, which was lovely. Roy Wood was up in the hotel, we had a few drinks, and John drove back. So such was the camaraderie. And once I did a fete, and I saw this figure in the shrub, it was like John Peel. But John was slightly diffident and embarrassed about supporting people. He felt he shouldn't do that, he should be a standalone man, And I said, John, what are you doing here? He said, oh, well, I knew you were here. So what he did, he'd come to support me. He didn't quite like to say so. So what was the question?
Okay, very quickly, because I'll probably have the time on this one, but you undoubtedly had, as a radio presenter in the days when we all listened to one channel, those that remember the 70s, 80s and 90s, you must have been a great influence on people, but I'm wondering, what was the radio you were listening to as a kid, and who was influencing you when you got to do national shows?
I'm not sure I was influenced by voices when I was a kid, because I wasn't thinking about getting into the radio. I was influenced by songwriters, not even singers. I always look at the label and think, oh, it's them again, those writers. And luckily, I got to interview a lot of these great writers before they disappeared for one of the books I did. So I was always inspired by writers. Even when I was a little kid, I thought, how do you make those notes do that? They're just fantastic, And then years later, you're talking to people like Irving Drake, who wrote things like I Believe, and he said, Mike, we were told to write a song that wasn't about religion, it wasn't about God, you don't want to mention heaven, we don't want to mention praying, but we want it by tomorrow. So he went home and wrote, I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. And went back in the following day, and Jane Froman, who was doing the show, said, I hate it, I don't want to do it. And they said, we'd like you to record it as a single. She said, not a chance. I'll sing it in the show, but it's a horrible song. Frankie Lane was at #1 for 18 weeks with it. So I was always inspired by those songwriters, and the early Celtic songs, the songs we used to sing at school, things like the Ash Grove and Westering Home. I just love those. So my inspiration was songs, really, and still are. I think I could still hear a hit song. And I still get excited. In Radio 1, Dorian Davis said, but don't you look forward to going on holiday? He said, no, there are two. Oh, I've got a great song out next week that I want to play. I'm still like that now. If a song comes in, as a new Crystal Berkeley, I thought, oh, that's a great song. And Richard Hall has got a terrific song out, which is right up in our top 10, Prism in G. So, can't wait to get on and play that tomorrow morning. So yeah, I still get excited. So I think it's probably the songs that excite me rather than people's voices. Although some great DJs. I mean, Johnny Walker was always great listening to the Pirates, and Roger Twiggy Day, people like that. They were great listening to the Pirates. But I suspect it was as much about the music, or probably more about the music they were playing than their voices, really.
What an icon, what a legend. Mike Reed, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So inspiring.